everybody. We ready to kick it off? All right, my name is Lisa Weiser. I am the founder and CEO of Trailblaze, which is a marketing communications agency. I think our speakers have been introduced here, so I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off. First with you, Guy. As we were discussing in the green room, I think Papa & Barkley may be the first brand that I legally bought in a dispensary in 2017. So it's been around a long time, and so have you. So I'm curious, when we're talking about innovation, how has innovation changed in cannabis from the time that you created your brand to where you are now, where you are consulting other brands and investors?
Absolutely, thank you for that. Okay, so Papa & Barkley was my second compliant company. The first one was a company called Neos that was a vape company in Colorado, and like many young growers, I had been cultivating for a long time, and when I came out of my closet, I thought that compromising to legitimize, putting on the lab coat, showing that I could fractionate oil was super important. You know, for a time, a rotovap or a short path distillation machine was like my biggest dream. Setting up a C1, D1 lab to create awesome light hydrocarbon extracts was all I wanted to do. And then I met my partner at Papa & Barkley, and I had this aha moment that, wait, what I was doing the 20 years previous to that, what everybody that I respected in the industry was stumping for was an alternative to this notion of active pharmaceutical ingredients. They were all stumping for plant medicine. And so we put the guardrails of on Papa & Barkley of clean from start to finish. Clean extracts using lipid infusion or water extractions or mechanical separation. Clean inputs, which are difficult to find in our supply chain when you test final form. So clean oils, clean beeswax, clean coconut oil to make the Papa & Barkley products, right? And so to answer your question, I thought that I was on the same journey. I started off coming out of the closet like, oh, I gotta show that I'm a scientist and over-refine cannabis, but then had the aha moment that, wait, this is about plant medicine. So when we started Papa & Barkley, I thought, especially being here California-centric, that innovation would go the way of being awesome plant medicine. I thought, like everybody else, instead of having to smoke tiny little penner joints, that we would be smoking larger form factors that really enhance the experience of smoking, not just focusing on getting high. Unfortunately, the answer to your question is innovation has gone the other way. We are caught in a death spiral, and please hear me, you guys, we are caught in a death spiral race to the bottom where the only differentiator we're allowing ourselves is potency, and that can't stand. The problem with distillating products is it disarms the culture and doesn't allow us to bring a rich nuance that people can really dig into to want to pay more, for brands to be about something, right? Plant medicine means that the farmer does a good job, we extract it, we make great products. The minute you're distilling to 99.9% cannabinoid, you're just telling Mr. and Mrs. Farmer, it doesn't matter what you do because I'm just gonna just put that in my machine and create some extract that I can sprinkle in and call it a premium product. So I wish I had a more positive message, but right now, innovation in our industry is going the wrong way. We should be honoring our farmers the same way when you drive through wine country, you see grapes. You should want to drive through cannabis country and see farms that are doing it clean. If all I'm gonna do as a formulator is use water, mechanical separation, and lipid infusion, it means that that farmer did an excellent job by not using foliars, having clean land, and bringing an awesome product out. And from that, I can move forward. That is not how our industry is maturing right now. We are about to, it's just not good. Let me just leave it there. I think I've made my point.
All right, we will circle back to it, I have a feeling. My next question is for you, Ron, co-founder of Jetty Extracts, obviously one of the most successful concentrate brands anywhere, and especially in California. So I'm curious, you guys have live resin, live rosin, infused, high THC, solventless, a lot of innovation just in your concentrate business. So I have a chicken or egg question for you, which is, do you feel like Jetty is responding to consumer demand or creating consumer demand with your approach to innovation?
Great question, and I'd say it's a little bit of both. From the time we started Jetty, which was in 2013, so we've been around quite some time, and just to kind of add on to what Guy was saying, I do think that the desire for high potency products. That's not really a new thing, unfortunately. So I don't think that the innovations heading that direction are necessarily something that we're just seeing. It's kind of something we've experienced for the last decade. But from the beginning, we've always wanted to make products that we would consume ourselves. We started a program called the Shelter Project in 2015, donating free oil to cancer patients. So there's always been a heavy medicinal side to what we do, and our goal has always been to clean up products, make them as healthy and natural as possible. We've really leaned in over the last few years into solventless, live rosin products. Just a couple of years ago, we got an OCal certification. So the state of California has created its own certification for organic products. Because we can't use the federal organic symbol given the federal status. So we've really leaned in, and it's got to be grown organically, it's got to be processed organically, and so that has become our #1 product. As a result, Jetty has the #1 rosin vape in the country, and we're only selling it in California and Colorado. We actually just launched it in New York today, but you know, it's not a product for everyone. A lot of people still are driving for just whatever's the cheapest and highest potency, but it is encouraging. It really is encouraging to see that there are consumers that want cleaner products and care about what they're putting in their body, and that's really what we're striving for. And it's driven mostly, again, by that wasn't a proven idea. It was kind of what we decided we thought where the market was going.
Got it. And I have a follow-up question for you on that, which is, how do you balance innovating and really, you know, driving and leading that category with just surviving? Because just, you know, keeping going and staying profitable in a state like California in particular is challenging.
That's an understatement. So I know there's a lot of pessimism right now. All of the cannabis stocks are getting hammered. There's limited capital in the industry. Lots of businesses aren't paying. I don't necessarily feel that this year is worse than any other year that I've been through. Every year has been really, really hard over the last decade. It's just, this is a really, really tough industry. It's about the people. It's the team. That's what makes any company successful. It's about hiring the right team and I guess motivating them, keeping them going, and it's also just about tenacity. You know, your back's going to be against the wall in this space, no matter who you are. Everyone is going to face those moments where the business seems like it's there's no path forward, but there's always a path forward. So it's just about figuring that out. For us, we've always been a product company. From day one, we've focused on product more than anything else. That has worked really well for us. I heard this on the retail panel, them talking about focus. I could not agree more. So trying to do too much has been the reason many companies have failed. For us, it's always been we focus on extraction, we focus on being the most efficient we can with that and pushing the tech forward. And we've had a lot of innovation on the extraction side. When we started, we were using, Guy's mentioning rotovaps. I mean, we were using coffee filters, and we were filling vape cartridges literally with syringes by hand, and now it looks more like a medicinal facility where there's tons of automation. So it's just about reacting quickly, but also staying focused on what you're really good at.
It's working, seems to be. My next question is for you, Kendra. So you're Director of Sales at Natura, and you guys are really known, I think, for the way that you collab with legacy operators here in California in particular. And I'm just curious, how do you approach R&D and innovation when you are in a collaboration? How does that process work?
Yeah, so we have it's wonderful. We have a few people on our team who have been in the industry for decades and decades, which is lovely, and they've cultivated these beautiful relationships with the legacy folks. And it's important to keep these guys alive, right? And to have these great partnerships with them, and they know what they're doing, and it's been so fun. So, we have, the Sluggers brand, for example, has been really, really successful for us. And so when we're able to say, hey, for example, we're coming out with a collab with Cam, who I'm a huge fan of Anna, by the way, and we're utilizing their flower and putting that into our pre-rolls, our little 5-packs, if you guys are familiar. So it's a big deal for us. It keeps things relevant. It keeps us excited. I think there is something to be said about, looking to the legacy groups. I would even go so far as to say looking towards, the traditional market to look for innovations that are happening on that side of the business. So keeping your ear to the ground and understanding, what's happening all over the market, what happened in the past, the people that we're going to be working with moving forward it's really important. So it's been a lot of fun. So we're also moving forward with folks with like Ball Family Farms and things like that. So we want to keep it moving and we have a great product to keep that going.
So I'm curious, since you mentioned camp, I keep reading how so much of the growth in cannabis, especially in new markets, is actually coming from women as consumers. Woohoo, ladies!
Yeah.
I'm curious if, when you approach innovation, do you find that process to be gendered? Are you seeing some of the trends, that are happening being driven by female consumers and people that are, or people that are newer to the space, or is it more still kind of the legacy consumers that are driving that, and for everybody else?
It's both sides of it, right? Because you have folks who have been in the industry for a long time and they remember brands that have been around, right? And then you have these newbies who just, they really are drawn to shiny, fun packaging and collectible cards and all of these things. So when you have that formula built out and you're able to check all of these boxes, Sluggers, for example, it checks so many boxes for so many people. So we have, people who've been in the industry forever who are like, they're like, yep, I see what you're doing and I love who you're collabing with. And then you have newer users who are like, I just love how it looks. It's a great product.
Well, you make a good point that the innovation has to happen across the board with the product itself, but also with the way that products are packaged and presented too. So
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. So Devin, I have a question for you. I'm a CPG marketer at heart, and you have spent a long part of your career with Red Bull before coming into cannabis. And they're obviously known for their really bold, industry-leading, out-of-the-box marketing. What lessons have you brought from that experience into cannabis, and what do you think the industry can learn as they're trying to build brands for the future from some of these more established CPG brands?
Yeah, I spent 10 years at Red Bull before joining the cannabis industry in 2017, and I think the first thing I needed to do was come in and give homage and respect to everybody that came before me, because if I were to come in and say, oh, I'm from Red Bull, do this way, I would get laughed out of the fucking industry. So it's really about trying to be authentic, and one of the things that was challenging for me is when I was at Red Bull is how do you make an Austrian brand locally authentic in like Los Angeles, for example. So I would work with a lot of creatives in LA, like Quisado's Taco Shop. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been there. We did a whole event with them where they curated the menu. I brought one of the artists from Obey to do all the decor and everything like that, and really create a locally authentic version of Red Bull in Los Angeles. And that's one of the things I wanted to bring to the table at Timeless as well, because Timeless is an Arizona brand, and I'm the GM for California. So how do I make an Arizona company cool in the epicenter of like cannabis culture, which is very challenging, right? And so what we did is, we try to find local artists. For example, there's an artist group called the Illuminaries that's from Northern California. So if you've ever been to Northern California, see Steph Curry murals all over the place. We worked with them to create an artist collaboration on our flip cases. So, working with them, doing on-site, we actually partnered with Embark for this. We did an on-site mural painting with them and really try to touch the consumers on a local basis, because if I say, hey, I'm from Timeless, it's an Arizona brand, you're not going to get the same feel as if you're working with LA or San Francisco or any kind of California artists or collaborators to, get the consumer to really understand and feel something local, relevant, and authentic for them.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that being an Arizona brand, because I was just in a dispensary in Ohio last week and came across Timeless and was thinking of you and wondering, I know you're the GM of California, but this is a brand that has made its way into the Midwest and towards the East Coast. How does innovation differ or change or transmute as it moves from the west to the east, or doesn't it? Are you seeing that consumers kind of want the same thing in those markets?
Yeah, so I think that the consumers in those markets are actually starved for brands. I think you have a lot of vertical operators that are in, let's say, New Jersey or Ohio that, they're bringing their products to market, but they're not necessarily brand people, right? They know how to make great cannabis, but how are they going to market it? So when we come into a market like New Jersey, for example, our sales shot up, 500,000 in the first month just because they were excited to see something that had some cultural relevance and had some excitement, some brand behind it. But it's almost like you have to reverse engineer the product, because California is where everything is innovated. California is what's cool. But also some of these regulations, like in Ohio, I can't call something Cactus Chiller in Ohio. It's got to be a very basic name. So how do you still get the brand excitement when you're, really changing a lot of what makes your brand cool in places like California and stuff like that. But I think what we've been really excited about is the people, they're buying into Timeless as a culture, as a market, as a brand, and that's something that's helped us stand out and really get a strong foothold, because in California, there's so many cool brands. How do you differentiate yourself in the land of cool, in the land of trendy, where, Coachella was born and things like that. And it's hard, right? But it's a lot easier in other states, to be quite honest.
That makes sense. I want to loop back to something that you said, Guy, about farmers, because I think when I think of R&D, I think of a lab, and I think that's where a lot of innovation happens and starts. But I think there's also an argument to be made that the innovation does or should start at the farm. When you are consulting with your clients, how do you encourage them to balance kind of pushing the envelope from an innovation standpoint on, flavors and formats and getting a little weird versus just going back to the basics and just making, growing and selling really good weed?
Well, usually it's pretty simple. I just encourage them to do better. And because of this artificial weird white space that has been created in our race to the bottom, if I say to you, create an awesome, clean from start to finish product, I believe that's innovative because there's not a lot of them, right? So if I define innovation as progressing past what we have or putting forward something that does not exist, even though intuitively I'd be like, oh, of course, it's cannabis, it's all plant medicine, that's what predominates, but it's not, right? Plant medicine is rare in our dispensaries, and so, for instance, I have clients on the East Coast who are lucky enough to grow the same cultivars that we do here, but have to have no license. They get tested weeks early and have this THCA from hemp, but it's great, awesome cannabis, and they could take that and put it in a short path distillation machine or put it in a CO2 machine, or what I encourage them to do is look, you've already grown great cultivars, honor that cultivar. And to me, innovation is a gummy that tastes like cannabis. I know oftentimes people are like, oh, but it tastes like weed. It's like, yeah, well, if I gave you grape juice and wine, as a newbie, you might be like, oh, I like the grape juice. And I'd be like, keep drinking the wine. It gets better. I do think that it's incumbent on us as professional cannabis people and thought leaders to encourage people to get their palate up. And it is very possible, while it takes TLC more than it does THC, to take the rosin, decarboxylate that, keep those VOCs that we call terpenes in there so that they can flavor and color the gummy. If you want a strawberry gummy, you should go to the mall. If you want an innovative cannabis gummy, try to look for one that is truly strain specific. And how do you know it's strain specific? Because it tastes like that strain, and the only thing that's powering that flavor is the actual cannabis. To me, innovation is making that plant medicine the driver of the value-added products, not obscuring it. And while at first I thought that would be the norm, it's not. And so while it's kind of not scientific, it is filling a need that we don't have right now. There is not a lot of real, obviously Pop and Barkley notwithstanding, but there's not a lot of truly plant medicine products. And to your point, with all the noise, it's very hard when you have an uneducated consumer to articulate those differentiators, especially then when you put price in. right? So yeah, I encourage my clients to do better, to try to create products that honor all the giants that we came from and really espouse plant medicine as the first and foremost. And the minute you're doing plant medicine and taking your extract and losing, I guess, milligrams by whether you solventlessly process it or whether you do mechanical separation, whatever you do, then it behooves you to go ahead and put the other excipients to be just as clean and just as good. And now you have this true, what I like to call clean label product that doesn't exist in prevalence in the market. And that's really what I've been educating folks to do, as opposed to invest in that next machine, that next sonicator, that next nano emulsifier, that next masking agent to masticate. I am like, avoid that and lean into the natural aspects of this plant.
Can I?
Absolutely, jump in.
So I love plant medicine. I think it's where we all come from as people, is why we wanted to get into this industry. I think at the heart of cannabis, we want to heal people. But there is something to be said about meeting a customer where they are and understanding that, and I hate making an alcohol comparison. Nobody likes it, but here we are. When I was young, probably too young, and getting into things, or, you like the flavors when you're young, right? You start getting into this thing, you start understanding it, and your palate grows with you, right? So you start getting older, you start understanding how complex a product can be, whether that's alcohol or kind of anything else. Even your food palate changes. So I think there is something to be said where some of the younger demographic, called the 21 to 25 or 21 to 30-year-olds, who still need, cannabis as a plant medicine, but don't quite understand why they need it as plant medicine, and they're saying it's, I just want to get really high, but their palates are not there yet, right? So, I would love to see, these 22-year-olds and 23-year-olds, which they are getting away from alcohol and they are turning to cannabis. And if it means that they have a little bit of flavored cannabis, you're still in a better place than they would have been if they were just drinking their lives away. So, again, I'm of the mindset that we meet our customers where they are. We understand that sometimes that means, there will be some of these, artificial or highly flavored products in the market because that's what their palate is looking for.
So I don't disagree with that. The only difference is we are not a mature industry, and in fact, we're an industry that's coming from years of stigma, and my fear, and it is coming from fear, and that's what you hear in my voice, is that we're setting up a system that keeps us too young and keeps us stuck in drug culture and prohibition mindset. The analogy you use is when I was younger, I drank Mad Dog 2020 or fortified wines and malt liquors and things that I did not have the palate. And I agree. Young people are not supposed to have the palate. You mature into that. But as we set up the bones of this industry, caught in this race to the bottom, we're stuck in this prohibition drug culture mindset where there are no adults in the room that are talking about the experience and talking about that next step. And I fear, it is fear, that we may not get there. One example of this is most brands are not speaking to adults. I don't want to, no offense to Jetty or anybody else, but when you look at the way brands are positioned, they are geared towards the younger vibe, if you will, right? It's like the equivalent of a Mad Dog 2020 versus a cool bottle of wine or a Dom Perignon, right? That's clearly marketed to adults. That's not what you take to the river with the homies, right? But more importantly, what I really want is truth for our industry, because we are coming from stigma and demonization, and if we don't lean into the science, who will? I would love to see, because I've heard that from marketers, meet where they are, so I know what I used to say to them is the only qualified people to meet the market where they are those of us who know where we're going. We are going somewhere. We have to mature the industry. We can't just keep dulling it down and feeding them what they want. If we were doing Allbirds, we'd be like, oh, people have been buying shoes forever. We can look at that data set. Our data set is evolving, and it's important to have kind of an eye on vision of what's next. But what I fear is that we are not going to allow the culture to blossom. It'll compromise the farm, and before you know it, all our products don't come from the farm. They're just value-added, taste-good products that happen to get you high. I'll remind everybody, we already had Marinol and Sativex for years. Cannabis is not that recreational product. Most of us, if you smoke every day, you know that you can only get so high at one point. At one point, no matter how much you smoke, it's oh, that's what I get. So it becomes an incorporated into your lifestyle like your cup of coffee. You want it at that time when you need it, not all the time, right? Alcohol, I don't care if you're the Irishman's Irish. At one point, one too many shots, you're blackout drunk. That's recreational. That is not cannabis. There are some marketers out here, I won't call them out, they used to tell me, oh, we need to start with 1 milligram gummies. And then they too went on the arc and understand that, like, no, eventually people get their sea legs, they get their potency, and then they eventually get their palate. But if we don't set this industry up with good, better, best, and allow certain actors to be like, this is a premium product, and have no idea where it came from or how it was manufactured, it's just a branding play, that's more mature CPG-like stuff that our industry, especially coming out of the demonization, that I don't think we can risk, because I think it's a slippery slope before we're federally mandated to just serve up THC and CBD in the form of Marinol and Sativex, but with colorful brands.
I think in many ways you're both right. I actually do come from the alcohol industry, and one of the things that they used to show off right off the bat was, you know, one of those charts that basically looked like this, and it was depicting from the age of 21 how much beer a consumer consumed, and by the time that they were 50, how much they consumed. And it was basically a recognition that just as the industry evolves, the consumer evolves too, and what they want to buy when they're 22 is going to be really different from how much they have to spend and what they want to buy and why they're using that product by the time that they're 50. So we really do need to think about that consumer journey, especially if you want to build a brand with longevity where, you know, a consumer is going to stick with you for many years to be able to have that variety. On that note, I have another question for you, Ron, because you're known, Jetty is known, you know, for concentrates and, you know, for cartridges. But when we have talked, it sounds like it's actually your all-in-one, a newer product that's performing really well. And you, of course, have infused pre-rolls as well, too. What is selling, and what are consumers, you know, most interested in now? And do you see that, you know, is it different based on, you know, the consumer's, you know, age or location, or are there some trends that are kind of universal?
So across all demographics, as we said, unfortunately, price and potency seem to drive a lot of buying decisions, and I think that's what makes Guy fearful. I'm actually a lot more optimistic that there are going to be good people like Guy and like my co-founder and partner Nate that are always creating better products, and that those are always going to command a premium, and there's going to be a market for them. As far as what's also selling is convenience. So you're seeing a big part of the market shift from flower to pre-rolls. I mean, as little as 5 years ago, pre-rolls sucked. Like, they were just kind of, you know, trim that was left behind and was getting rolled up and sold, and no one liked them because they weren't good. But now they're really good, and there's infused pre-rolls that are really good, and they're taking a huge amount of share because people are lazy, and most people don't roll their own tobacco cigarettes because they don't want to spend the time. So, I mean, this is becoming more like other CPG. On the vape side, we've always known that vape is really convenient, and that's a big part of why people want to use it. It doesn't smell. You can consume it indoors. You don't have to roll a joint or pack a bowl. It's just a much easier thing to do. As far as the all-in-ones, we just launched our first all-in-one, so it's a little early to call it that's been a huge success, although it seems to be going well. Just as little as a couple of years ago, single digits of the entire vape market were these integrated all-in-one devices, and 510 thread was really dominant. But what we've seen is it's now over a third of the market in California, 50% of the market in New York, and this is also across all demographics. People just want things that are convenient, which is why we're meeting them where they are and launching this all-in-one device. We put a lot of energy into testing lots of different devices. We've stuck with C-Cell. They're here. They're our manufacturer for many years. And we think that the market is definitively going to move in that direction.